Thank you,
Thank you,
snowboarding.
snowboarding.
Thank you,
snowboarding.
snowboarding.
Hey friends, how you doing? My name is Chris Cracknell. You are listening to Thank You Snowboarding in association with the Snowboard Asylum. It's a podcast that dives into UK snowboard culture, past and present. But this week we're going really far back, furthest back we've been so far, to meet a guy called Stuart Duncan, who was one of the true pioneers of snowboarding in the UK. And funnily enough, lives around the corner from me. We bumped into each other a few years ago at a wedding, the wedding of mutual friends, Ben and Charlie. And by complete coincidence, we were sat next to each other. Now, Charlie and Ben knew a bit about my snowboarding background, but they had absolutely no idea about what Stuart had contributed to the sport in this country. So that was a pretty crazy coincidence. One that wasn't lost on me at the time, and certainly when we were thinking about putting this podcast together, it was like, right, Stuart has to be one of the first. So yeah, he came over a few weeks ago and we sat down, sort of a bit of reminiscing, but I found out a lot more about his story than I could have really ever known. I didn't realise that he was literally one of the first people to call up Burton Snowboards in America to find out where he could find one, and to be out there doing it by himself in Scotland. So yeah, it's an interesting tale, and he actually kind of wrapped his head around snowboarding a little bit more than maybe someone else might have done at the time, trying to get a little bit of an infrastructure together, get a bit of a scene together, and sort of push things forward. So yeah, I love this conversation with Stuart, and I hope you do too. So, well, let's just get into it. Here we go, Stuart Duncan. So what did snowboarding look like when you first saw it? Like, where did you see it? Like, and how did you see? Like, what the fuck was going on there?
I think my earliest memory was the James Bond film, A View to a Kill, which came out around about 84, 85.
84, isn't it?
Something like that. And I remember watching that first sequence where the snowmobile blew up, and there's like a ski off the skidoo, and James jumps on it and he surfs down the hill, and at the bottom he goes across a stretch of water. And
that's it.
The guys in skis couldn't follow him. I remember seeing that, and that just, oh my God, that just blew me away. You know, having come from a skateboarding and BMX background, but when I saw that, I was just like, I've got to do that. Surfing on snow, that was just the most amazing thing.
Where did you grow up?
In Aberdeen.
So what's the relation from Aberdeen to the mountains there?
About an hour's drive to Glenshee.
And did you go up into the Highlands from there?
Yeah, well, what happened then is that I saw it on this James Bond film, and then I dug up an old Thrasher magazine, and I found an article on snowboarding, and I think there was an advert in there for Burton Snowboards. So I called them. They were in Vermont to say, look, where can I get one of these snowboards? And they had just newly appointed a distributor in London called Marquee Trade. So I called Marquee Trade and gave them a load of bullshit and basically bought two boards from them. One for me, one for my mate, Cammy Bain. And we got the boards, no idea what to do, how to use them. But we lived in Aberdeen, close to Glenshee. So we drove up to Glenshee one Saturday afternoon, and not even sure if we're going to be allowed on the hill, because I don't think they'd really ever seen snowboards. So, strapped them on and tried to go down the hill. Well, of course, it was a complete disaster. The first day was just falling over constantly. I mean, no idea what to do. And but we both, really enjoyed it. And the thing is, even then, we were wearing moon boots. And of course, moon boots were hopeless because you couldn't lace them up, so you kept coming out
like the CNA jobs.
Yeah, because we didn't have any proper gear. He'd been skiing, Cammy had been skiing, but I'd never been skiing. So we went back the second weekend and we used hiking boots, and they were much better because we were obviously strapped in properly. Yeah.
What boards were you using then?
They were Burton Elite 150s. Yeah.
Nice.
And so then we, after a couple of times, you know that feeling, you're falling all over the place, and all of a sudden you link the turn, and then you're off. And we were down the hill, and luckily nobody from the lift company at Glenshee kind of said anything. They just kind of let us get on with it. And that was it. We were just hooked, absolutely hooked.
Were you skating before then? Because our mutual friend Ben was saying that you'd built a skate park in Aberdeen.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing for me was really BMX, and we were sponsored by Vincent Frames down here in Rottingdean, and we competed, raced, freestyle, the works.
Yeah.
And then we kind of drifted into skateboarding, and we had this big warehouse in Aberdeen that my dad managed to convince a friend of his who owned this empty warehouse to let us use this warehouse. So we had our ramps in there, BMX ramps, and then I took it upon myself one day, well, let's build a half pipe. So coming from a kind of construction background, I was only 17, we managed to get a lot of wood together, and we built this half pipe. At the time, and this is going back to like SS20 days when Mon had his ramp, and, and everyone else, but it was the biggest in the UK at the time. I always remember it was 24 foot wide, 8 foot high, with a 4-foot canyon in the middle. And we kind of got into skateboarding, but I was never that good at skateboarding. I could ride the ramp, but I couldn't really do anything amazing.
Right.
But what happened was, of course, word spread. We would go there in the evenings, myself, Adrian, Steve Crampton, Mark Webster, and practice. And then at the weekends, we would have this posse. All these kids would turn up because they heard about it. So, and then we had like pro skaters coming up, like Davy Phillips, Cubic, Aljo, and all these guys would turn up.
Yeah.
And of course, they never had any money, so they wouldn't want to stay in a hotel or a B&B. They'd want to crash in the warehouse overnight. So I'd have to leave them there, go home at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and just worry that when I come back the next morning, the building would still be standing. But it was okay. But that carried on for the best part of 6 months. I was really getting into snowboarding then, and as the winter came round, the liability of running this ramp, and we weren't charging for it. I just thought, you know what? I really just want to go snowboarding every weekend. I don't want to be in that warehouse. Right. So we just decided to dismantle it, get rid of it, so we could concentrate on snowboarding. And then it was the best thing I ever did.
So were you sort of, when you went snowboarding, were you thinking of, like, what was the influences? Because obviously there wasn't many influences to see what it was that anybody else was doing. So what were you sort of doing? Were you trying to do skate tricks and things, or were you just like literally riding around and we were sort of working it out?
We were riding out, but we were very aware that it was coming from a skating influence, and that you could do tricks, and it seemed obvious that there would be half pipes and you could ride in, although there was no half pipes at Glenshee, but that's what we strive for. And it was all about getting air. It was all about trying to jump. You never wanted to be just riding down riding down the hill following someone else like what the skiers did. We saw it as it was very much individual, and you were trying to create your own style. So, but I mean, we got inspiration because Marquee Trade had I think one snowboarding video that we bought, which would have had like Craig Kelly riding in it, and some other guys, so from the States. So you knew where you were heading when you were watching them. It was like that's where we need to go. So we had plenty of inspiration. Then obviously, as the years carried on, more and more videos came out where you got the inspiration from.
Were you getting any grief, or were you getting like props from anybody else up on the mountain, like people interested in what you were doing?
Yeah, there was a lot of interest. People were like, wow, I've never seen that before, especially once we started to get the hang of it.
Yeah.
We could ride down the mountain competently. I mean, there was a lot of interest. People, had never seen anything like it before. So, that was good fun. You were kind of, and of course, we were kind of wearing skate style type. I had a Ocean Pacific snowboarding jacket or skiing jacket. We weren't wearing what the skiers were wearing.
No.
I think we'd progressed on to Sorel boots by that point. They were like the high-tech footwear, boots to wear. They leaked like crazy, but they were better than the hiking boots or the moon boots. And I think the first season we did it, I think we really ever saw anyone else snowboarding at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I think the next year. Oh no, sorry. By this point, of course, my other mates. So Cammy was really into it.
Yeah.
Adrian came along, Mark Webster came along, and they all wanted to do it. Steve Crampton, they all wanted to do it as well. So they all bought boards.
Yeah.
And of course, there was a kind of posse of us.
Yeah.
And then I think the next year I went with my girlfriend to the Jose Fernandez snowboard camp in Switzerland, and I remember Bert Lamar was there as one of the instructors, and that's where I first really started to meet proper.
What was it like then, sort of walking into an environment where there are way more snowboarders. That must have been quite mental. And
it was
having a mountain to yourself, essentially, to then being amongst this culture. That must have been quite a shock.
Yeah, and it was a shock, but it was a nice shock as well, because you could tell this. It's still such a new sport.
Yeah.
But you knew this is going to go somewhere, and when you had these kind of pro riders there as well, it was like a proper snowboard camp that I paid to be on, and they had a kind of small half pipe, and it was there was just such a buzz and an energy that this new sport was really gonna take off.
Did you feel that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right from the start. I knew from kind of after that first weekend that this sport's got a future, definitely.
So what happened then? Like, obviously you eventually were hooked up by Burton, weren't you? Did you ever ride for Burton?
Yeah, no. Well, again, I then just was obsessed on going on snowboarding holidays, and I think myself and Cam and the boys, we went to, I think I was still with my girlfriend, we went to Teen, and we were in Teen for like a week, and I remember walking along the street, whatever, in Teen, and I spotted these three guys that were wearing Vans. Now back then, if someone wore Vans, it meant they were into skateboarding or BMX. You didn't wear them.
Yeah.
They weren't a fashion brand. So I got chatting to him, and it turned out to be Dave Furno and Ian Cocking and someone else. So and they were boarding.
Yeah.
They were there boarding. So we hooked up with them and went boarding with them, and then that was really the kind of start of realizing that there were other people in the UK.
Little pockets.
Yeah, little pockets of, and then they knew people like Jeff Parr in Wales, and and put us in touch with other people. So, we had a kind of contact with other snowboarders after that.
Yeah, it blows my mind that there's just these people discovering this thing and not knowing anyone else is doing it, but like, this is something really special.
Yeah.
And this is so much fun, and it gets me out there, and not knowing anyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I saw it I went with a school to Austria. I think I was must have been in the fifth year of school. And just going up above the clouds and seeing mountains blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, that was almost enough. And I was skiing a bit, and it was fine. And I saw a guy on a snowboard, and just remember thinking, like, that's the pinnacle. That's the coolest, possibly the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, same.
How do I get to do that? And then not knowing anything about it, and then sort of seeing the first issue of Snowboard UK in Charing Cross Station, W.H. Smith's, thinking, holy shit, there's other people there's a thing. This is a thing.
Yeah, Adrian's on the front cover.
He was, not grabbing.
No. Some things never change.
Yeah, so how did you get hooked up with Burton? Like, what happened to get there?
Well, we were really, really new to it, and I decided straight away there'd be a market in selling boards.
Right.
But then what happened was Market Trade then lost the distributorship, and it went to Second Level Sport.
Second Level, of course.
Feltham, and I very early got in touch with Phil and Rick, who owned it, and basically probably badgered them to sponsor me as as a rider.
Yeah.
And because there wasn't very many of us then, it was quite easy to do. So I kind of started riding for Burton then.
What was it like when you got that first package? What did they send you? What was like the first package?
Well, at the same time, what I also did as kind of part of the deal was I set up as a snowboard shop. So I bought a load of stock from them, and I set up a kind of to sell boards and bindings and stuff, just kind of from my garage almost. And so I was kind of involved with them in a kind of business side and riding side. But it was always exciting to get, I remember when we moved away from the Burton Elite 150 up to the next range, I think was called the Cruiser range they had. And these were all big, long boards, for riding. They weren't short boards, but it was always exciting. Well, you knew yourself when you bought a new board or you got into news. It was great. And then, of course, another big thing that happened not long after that, I think it was maybe 1988, we had the first proper competition in the UK. It was sponsored by the Sun newspaper at Glenshee, and it was kind of the British
Sun newspaper.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was the Scottish Snowboard Championships or the Britain. It was probably called the Scottish Snowboard Championships, and we had a like a giant slalom and a kind of freestyle event.
Yeah.
And I was really friendly with my mate Noel Gaddo, Dutch guy.
Yeah, no,
he lived in Aberdeen, and he was really into it as well. And we raced, and I think for that first competition there was maybe 35, 40 people turned up. Like,
blimey.
Yeah, like Jeff and Dave, and they all came up because
Yeah.
by that point the word was growing.
Yeah.
So it was it was a really good kind of starting event. And I think not long after that I decided that we needed some kind of magazine or zine or something. So I started a little publication called Hyperactive, just to try and it was just like a little photocopied zine, just to try and kind of keep everyone together and find out what was going on. And I did that. There wasn't very many of them ever produced, although Jeremy always tells me he's still got his copies of them, and I've still got the original copies. But that helped kind of just kickstart the whole.
Yeah, it's interesting you felt the need to try and okay, we need to sort of corral this a little bit, and we need to sort of get everyone together on this.
Yeah, I thought it was important to just because it was such so early days.
Yeah.
And there was no real kind of focal, central. Well, you didn't have the internet back then, did you? So I mean, it was all, it was difficult to communicate. So.
But talking with Ed Lee about this, kind of it was something that snowboarding did really well, was like kind of keep themselves like, we own this.
Yeah.
And he, sort of, we touched on it briefly. He's like, sort of, we've sort of given that away now, and it's a real shame because for a long time snowboarders owned snowboarding.
Oh yeah, completely.
And it was you can't just step in here with money or whatever and tell us what to do. And that made for crazy times, I think.
Yeah. No, I remember. I mean, I think there's lots of stories, but like when Ian Felton from Chaos came along, he was kind of the first person, or Ben from Esprit de Keep, these were people that all of a sudden had money, and they put a lot of money into sport. They got involved in the distribution side and importing and distributing, and that's when it really started to kind of, take off. And obviously then, Jeremy was there from the start. I can't remember how we first met Jeremy, but I know how we met Jeremy. There was a Sims distributor called Rodney George,
right,
and he distributed Sims boards, and Jeremy got a job with him as his salesperson. So Jeremy was traveling all over the UK, so we obviously got hooked up with him pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's funny that he's then become like this sort of, he's a bit like the glue in the scene as well, because that's what he would have been doing, I guess, going around. He would have known everyone.
Yeah,
he would have been like the internet of the day,
He was the internet of the day because he was always traveling around, going to shops, trying to convince shops to buy boards, and he was been hooking up with these different groups in different parts of the country and kind of spreading the word. So, Jeremy was really an instrumental figure in pushing it, and amazingly that he's still just as active today.
Still in the trenches, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation we have with him.
Yeah.
But something that I sort of got talked about a lot to do with, I guess, not just the Scottish snowboard scene, but the snowboard scene at the time was there was a lot of partying.
No, you must be mistaking this. Must be some other sport.
But I think that sort of goes hand in hand. It was like, we are in charge of this thing and we can make the rules of how we're going to live our lives.
Yeah, well, we were all young. We were all in our kind of late teens, early 20s. So, and, I remember Tony Brown opened the original Snowboard Academy, in Aviemore, and that was a real focal point for everyone to congregate. And, and Aviemore was famous for the pubs and drinking, so everyone used to stay there all the time, and every weekend it was definitely drunken.
Yeah, but I think the sort of snowboard, it kind of lends itself to a hedonistic thing, or it was certainly associated with a hedonistic lifestyle for a long time.
Yeah,
and I wonder, like, what the difference to people getting into snowboarding now, like that connection is just completely severed, or whether there is still that thing,
It probably still exists, doesn't it? Because you've got, like, was it Snowbomb and Hintertux, or those?
I don't know. Is that still going?
I think it's still going. Yeah. but it's all really young. Wherever you've got younger kids, then I think it would still happen. But it's back then it was a big part of it. I mean, even when we were doing competitions and championships, we'd all be up late drinking heavily.
Yeah, but I think it was that same thing, wasn't it? It was like big get together with a massive extended family.
Yeah.
Even like the dry slope comps and all that sort of stuff, the Sheffield.
That's right.
Everyone went.
Yeah. Everyone camped over.
Everyone camped over, and you got to see all these people that you sort of only saw at other dry slopes.
That's right.
Sporadically throughout the year. So it was like a reason to have a party.
Yeah. No, definitely.
And snowboard, and they seemed to go hand in hand.
Yeah, they did.
Enough people came up just to spectate, to be at the parties and to watch what was going on.
Yeah.
On the slopes, as well as, as opposed to actually being involved in the competing.
That's right. Yeah. No, it was. And then of course, then the other big thing that happened was Snowboard UK came along. Eddie and Stig set up the magazine, and that was a big, I think, turning point when that came along, and then the British Snowboard Association kind of got formed, along at the same time.
Did you breathe a sigh of relief when that happened? It was like, it is actually happening.
Yeah, I did, because I kind of set up what I called the Scottish Association of Snowboarding, and along with the magazine, to kind of create this kind of club, and it kind of took over from that. So I was quite happy to kind of hand it over, because I just wanted to go snowboarding, and I was sponsored as well, so I didn't really have a huge amount of time to do it. So it was a welcome relief, and it was all then heading in the right direction when we had a magazine and the organisation behind it. So
I remember seeing your picture. I seem to have like a fairly good. I must have pored over these magazines because that was my only access to it.
Yeah.
So I remember poring over these magazines. I remember we kind of copied it at our local dry slope a little bit, but I saw. Yeah, did you have a sticker on your board that said "Snowboarding's not for sheep"?
Yeah.
What was that? Tell me a bit about that.
I've still got a few left.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh man, I need one of those.
Okay. That all came about because before I got into, as we started snowboarding, I go up to Glen Shee, and you'd watch the skiers come down the hill, and they would all kind of come down in a line like a snake all the way down, and they just followed one another. And I just thought, they just look like sheep. They're just constantly following one another. Whereas when we were snowboarding, we were just all over the shop. We didn't follow one another. You were looking for lines, jumps to go off, and so that's where that came about. Snowboarding's not for sheep.
Was there? I'm just wondering if there's something more. Was it like a club of you had them or something? It was like a little defining feature. Like we've got these stickers.
I don't know. I just got I think it was an old girlfriend to design the sticker, and I got them printed up. And just for I'll tell you what, because the other thing at the time, it was skateboarding's not a crime. Remember, there was those bumper stickers.
Yes, of course.
Skateboarding is not a crime. Snowboarding's not for sheep. It was kind of based on that kind of same kind of thought.
Those and the chaos dressing gowns seem to go hand in hand. I mean, I wasn't there for any of that, but they're the images that I sort of relate from that time. When I think of that sticker, I think of the chaos dressing gowns.
Simon Smith.
Darren,
they all wore them.
Yeah, so what happened? Like, you obviously were riding for a long time. What sort of, when did, as Ed said, like, when did the dust start settling on it, and you sort of extended periods between going, and then before you know it's a long time? How did that happen?
I was riding for Burton and was competing as much as I could, and then I got to do this TV thing called Run the Gauntlet Alpine Challenge, where I represented the UK as the snowboarder, and it was we filmed it out in Switzerland for ITV or someone, and I went and did that and really enjoyed it, and competed with all these other guys, some world-class guys, and it was really good fun. And then I came back from that and was just kind of started to feel a little bit burnt out. It was just, I think it was about 1993, we did that. And then I remember Simon Smith and Mark Webster and myself, we did another promotional video for something else, and came back and I was just starting to get a bit tired. Wasn't it? Because the thing, being kind of semi-professional back then, you weren't paid a salary. You were still trying to hold down a job and get as much time as you could away.
Yeah.
And by that point we'd been kind of doing it for 6-7 years, which in snowboard terms was a long time. Sure. And then in the end, I decided I would have one last kind of stint. I was going to go to Oregon, go to Mount Bachelor for a season. So Mark Rothwell and I went to Mount Bachelor did a season, and after about the second week, I really twisted my knee badly, and to the point where I couldn't really ride that well. So I went back up the mountain and was just taking photos for the magazines and stuff, because I'd done a bit of writing stuff for the magazines and taking pictures and stuff. And then what had a big part in the rest of my life was when I was there, I went to this business center and discovered the internet and saw the internet on this computer in this business center. And that then blew me away. Yeah. And I came back from that holiday. I'd been speaking to Al Fleming from Acid Snow, who was also interested in the internet. And to cut a long story short, when I came back, I sold everything up, kind of quit snowboarding, moved down south to Staffordshire and set up an internet business with Al. Right. But here's the catch. It wasn't completely an internet business, because he was running the snowboard clinic for the guys at Grand Prix.
Worked for them for a while as well, didn't they?
Yeah. So we had to keep the snowboard clinic business going. So we had this big barn in Staffordshire, and on the ground floor we had the snowboard clinic, and then upstairs we had the internet business, and we kind of ran the two of them. But I have some regret now in that I wish we hadn't had the snowboard business, because it was just a big distraction. Yeah. Because we were spending more time servicing boards and rather than making our fortune on the internet. Yeah. And but we did it for a few years, and then we ended up becoming the Northwave distributor for Northwave boots and bindings, Drake bindings, and so we got even more involved in it. And we took over from the Spree to Keep when they gave it up. And, so there was, I just kind of like a lot of people, you got completely distracted. And we would go to the Snowdome. We were not far from the Tamworth Snowdome. So when we were snowboarding, it was just down the Snowdome at Tamworth. But it just became less and less as the business side of it, really took over, and we were focused down on the business side. And it comes to a point where, we weren't going abroad anymore to go snowboarding. It was just the Snowdome. And then my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she wasn't really into winter sports at all. She wanted to go on summer holidays. So from then on in, we always went on summer holidays, and I just basically stopped going, and that was it. Yeah. So I had a big break.
So what you mentioned that, was it a couple of years ago you took your kids? Is Helen into the idea of doing it now, or is she like?
I think she tried skiing once, wasn't really her thing. Yeah. So there was never any interest. So my son, a couple of years ago, basically I had a 29 or 30 year break, never was on a snowboard, and then 2 years ago my son was 11. He was really keen, wanted to go snowboarding, so he said, right, let's go for a long weekend. Yeah. So we first of all went up to the Snowdome at Hemel. Right. He had a lesson just to kind of get a feel for it. And then we went out to Val Thorens, and he's still very much a beginner. He really enjoyed it. We were kind of stuck on the nursery slope. Yeah. But the amazing thing was I rented a board, borrowed some kit off some friends of mine, and stood at the top of the nursery slope, put the board on, and my wife, Helen, had said to me, "Look, don't you think you should have a lesson first?" I was like, "I'm not having a lesson."
You're not having a lesson.
Do you know who I was?
He's the right of Burton. You can't have a lesson.
I can't have a lesson. Are you ridiculous?
Have you ridden before?
I put the board on, and honestly, it was just like riding a bike. It was like I'd never been away. It was still muscle memory. Call it what you want. It was just natural. So that was a big relief. I didn't need the lesson.
Do you ever think like when you weren't doing it? Like I do it walking down the road. You see like a ledge or something. You're like, could just do like a spin onto that and a grind and then off. Do you have that?
I still do it. I mean, I've still got a BMX. I still ride my BMX. Yeah,
sweet.
And a skateboard down the Lagoon Skate Park. So yeah, no, I think you're always like that, looking for terrain. Yeah. So so that was just natural. So then that holiday, we never really got off the nursery slopes. And then last year we went to Teen, and we went and stayed with Dragon Lodge.
Dragon Lodge,
Yeah.
of course. I know John very well.
John and Will Hughes.
Will's out
Yeah,
there,
so
isn't
Will's
he?
out there. John's here in Brighton. So it was towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
We timed it perfectly. He said it was a friends and family week.
Yeah.
So there was other boarders there. We went and stayed there just for a long weekend. And my son Ati, he just loved it because we were mixing with other snowboarders.
Yeah.
It was a much better vibe than just staying in some nondescript hotel. You really felt you were
100%.
in the culture there.
Yeah.
And Will, hasn't changed. He's still the same. And
literally has stayed the same.
He's made us very welcome. He's a great cook.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. Thoroughly recommend Dragon Lodge for snowboarding and skiing. There was skiers there as well. But anyway, we went out, and within about an hour of the first run, it just clicked for Ati. He was linking the turns.
Yeah.
Then after that, we were off the rest of the holiday up the mountain. And,
amazing.
By the end of it, I was teaching him to carve, not to slide down the hill and carve, and he was trying to do jumps. And so now he's obsessed. He keeps asking me all the time, when are we going snowboarding again? When are we going again? So we'll go again. Probably back to Dragon next year with Adrian and his kids, I think, as well. So
and Johnny Weeks, hopefully.
Maybe Johnny, yeah. Or anyone else who wants to come? Maybe you want to come? We organise a big posse. We
I
all
want to
go.
come for sure. We're talking about it. We're going to go and stay. Do you know Chris Moran?
Yeah.
Well, he's just finished renovating a place in Bozell, just underneath Maribel.
Oh, okay.
And he comes here a lot. When he's over, he comes here. He gets all his posts sent here.
Okay.
So we know when he's coming because parcels start turning up. Our hallway fills up with parcels, and then he turns up and takes them.
Excellent.
So yeah, we were talking with friends today, just like, okay, first week of the Easter holidays, let's finally get the kids out there. Let's go and make it happen in some shape or form. I don't know if they'll like it, but
they will. They'll love it.
I figure
take them up to Hemel for just one session. On snow.
Yeah. We were talking about Knockhatch, like the dry slope.
Oh yeah.
Snowflex place.
Yeah.
Sort of over in East Sussex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sort of time, because I haven't been away for sort of 5 years.
Yeah.
And given that, it was my entire life for a long time, it's just craziness that we haven't done that.
No.
And it's mostly just through money and just being a parent.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're now at that point where it's like, I think they'll dig it. I think it's worth putting in some time and money into it.
Definitely.
To get them to see what the mountain, even if they just jaws drop at the mountain and they don't necessarily click with the snowboarding.
No, but
just showing them that world, showing them a few videos, and just
you go up in that cable car at the top of a mountain and you come out onto the, it blows your mind away. I mean, it still did when I went, that last time. I mean, it was just amazing. Yeah, so, I just kick myself that I gave up for 30 years.
Yeah.
I should never have done that. I should have just made a point of going, over those years.
So given that, kind of over that time, what does snowboarding mean to you? Like, I feel for me that it's something that has absolutely shaped my life. So what would you say?
It has. Well, it definitely shaped my life, because when I started snowboarding, I was about, I think, 17, so a very impressionable age, and getting involved in the way that we did with the snowboard scene, and then ultimately I ended up working in the industry, so that was a major direction I headed in, and that led into internet and technology, and I'm now very involved in technology companies and so on. So I mean, it's had a major part. If I hadn't done snowboarding, I don't know where we would have ended up, which direction would have gone, and maybe wouldn't have had any interest in technology, or whatever. Maybe it's very difficult to say. Probably would have, because I'd kind of given up BMX and skateboarding to focus in on snowboarding, but I've kind of gone back to riding bikes and skateboards now. So, but it's the snowboarding that's also brought that that interest back in. So,
and what would you say to sort of, if someone like me and you, in this instance, it's, or not quite, because you've sort of discovered you are going again. I'm sort of still in the camp that is still waiting, still trying to make that happen. What would you say to those person, or to the 17-year-old kid who who's heard about it or seen it at the Olympics or something and thinks, oh, it's another discipline. Do you know what I mean? Like, what would you say to them about snow? What can it give them that other things can't?
Well, I suppose the Olympics were amazing, and when you watch them going off those kickers, but that's not what it's all about, is it? I mean, we didn't have those great big kickers when we were around. We were kids. For us, it was all about free riding, and when you see those big kickers, it looks really intimidating, and I think it would put you could put a lot of kids off. They look at that and they think, oh my God, I'm not going to do that. I'll break my neck. Whereas it's more about the free riding, and just yourself, when you get that first lift up and there's 2 feet of powder and you put that board on, I mean, there's nothing quite like that sensation of floating down the hill, is there? I mean, it's just and being in that environment of the mountains, it's completely different to to anything else.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to experience. And if you want to go and go off these kickers or go in the half pipe, then that's great. Those are disciplines like slalom and giant slalom, but that doesn't need to be about that. It just can be about having fun. It's all about having fun, enjoying it.
Yeah, I guess not many kids get in, like the ski jumping where they hit these jumps that are almost 90 degrees. Yeah. There's not a lot of people that look at that and think, oh, that's for me.
No.
They might look at it and go, that's mental.
Yeah.
And I sort of fear that that's how people view snowboarding now, and they don't get to see the counterculture side of it that we saw. Do you know what I mean? Like when I saw it, there was you guys, there was Chaos the movie, there was Sean Palmer, and snowboarders owned everything. So they'd go to events that weren't run by snowboarders, and they'd be like, oh, we're disqualifying you because you've done an invert, and the snowboarders would be like, fuck you. It's our sport. We'll define what it is. You can't come here and tell us what we should be doing or how it's going to look. And I worry slightly that sort of young people looking at it don't find it exciting because it's this unobtainable standard that they're looking at, and they're sort of missing the point. Doing a season with your mates, like 10 of you in a small apartment in France, and just getting up and going up the mountain every day and having a laugh with your mates for a few months. Like, that doesn't seem to happen. I don't know why that doesn't happen, because that's like everyone, like from my point of view, everyone should experience that. Because it's so fun.
Definitely. I mean, that's what it's all about. But I mean, when you start any sport, you're going to have to start at the beginning, aren't you? You're not going to be going off these big kickers. But like you say, I do worry that maybe kids get put off. Maybe they feel intimidated, that they don't want to try it when they're watching the Olympics and these extreme. I mean, these are athletes at the top of their game, aren't they? They're gymnasts, really.
Yeah.
That just so happen to have a snowboard strapped to their feet. So. No, there's so much more to it than that. The free riding, the powder.
So on that, tell me about the best day of snowboarding that you can remember.
There's probably a couple of ones. I mean, I always wanted to ride in a helicopter. And when we did Run the Gauntlet, we got to go in a helicopter.
Nice.
So, helicopter up to the top of the mountain, jump out, ride down, fresh powder. I mean, that's hard to beat. Helicopter above filming you. I mean, that's that's when you watch snowboard videos.
That's movie stuff,
in Alaska,
isn't it?
With Sean Farmer and people like that when they were riding. Another highlight was riding with Craig Kelly.
Oh, did you do that? Was that Burton thing? And it was on that program.
He came to Scotland, a very, very brief visit. Came up to Fort William. Johnny, Darren, and myself, Burton team at the time, drove up, and we met him at Annickmore, and there wasn't a lot of snow. It was misty. But we hiked up, found this big patch of snow, and did a few runs with him. And that, obviously, I mean, Craig Kelly was like the man. He was a god. For snowboarding.
He was head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah. So to meet him, he was a global ambassador. He was traveling all over the world. And all he really wanted to do was go and have a pint of Guinness. So afterwards, we all went to the pub and drank Guinness. So that was another kind of highlight. I mean, there was just there was a huge difference between riding in Scotland and riding in the continent, in France and Austria and stuff, as and then even going to the States, we travelled all over the States, Colorado, Vermont, everywhere, and rode. And there's some. We'd always, you always had the best days, like in Colorado or Mount Bachelor was amazing.
Yeah,
because it was geared for snowboarding.
Yeah.
So some amazing days. I wish I could say some of my best days were had in Scotland, but they weren't. Although you used to get the odd day where the sun would come out and it would be glorious.
Yeah.
But I think probably Colorado would be the top of my list. I think for places to go.
It's interesting. And where is there ever a time when you were somewhere and you just thought, "Wow, snowboarding's put me in sort of whatever it was," like from meeting Craig Kelly and riding a little patch of snow in Scotland, like or kind of find yourself on the other side of the world and just thinking snowboarding's put me here, like this is because of snowboarding. What's like the sort of most out there sort of memory that you've got that relates to that?
That's a really tricky one. I mean, probably doing the TV stuff was, to be representing the UK in this TV competition, that was quite a big highlight for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because that's not just snowboarding. There's a lot of cogs and wheels happening around that, and you're the focus of that.
Yeah. No, we had helicopters and snowmobiles and motocross bikes, and it was quite unique.
Were you like, I'm a kid from Aberdeen, and all this is happening around me?
Yeah, I guess, and representing the UK.
Yeah.
Which was that was special. I think. There for a week, all expenses paid. It was good fun.
Brilliant. What does sort of snowboarding mean to you now? Like when you consider the whole thing?
I'm so glad I was a part of it way back then. When it first started. I always knew it was going to be big. I maybe didn't realize how big it would become, because it definitely became very mainstream.
Yeah.
I remember writing articles in Snowboards UK and White Lines, about it. You could see it changing. It no longer became this unusual sport that people looked at you when you did it. It just kind of became, that's like it is now. It's more it's a mainstream sport. When you go abroad, there's as many snowboarders as there are skiers almost. So
yeah,
and it's good to feel you being part of that history, and part you helped move the sport along.
Do you feel like a kind of some sort of ownership, or sort of fathership? That's not even a word, is it? Fathership, but like, do you sort of see it and think, yeah, I'm part of that? Like when you see Jenny win a bronze, when she becomes the first person from the UK to win a snow-based Olympic medal, do you sort of have that, like, that's an extension of what we were?
I've never really thought about it like that, to be honest. I think it's great that we're a non-alpine country and we can produce champions like that. I mean, it's fantastic. I think snowboarding would have happened, no matter what I did or anyone else did. It would have all happened eventually. It might have just taken a little bit longer, but it definitely would have happened, because it was just such a new and fun sport. It was. Because I'm not involved in the industry now. I mean, I saw Jeremy earlier this year. He came by for a cup of tea, and it still seems to be a healthy sport. People are still buying boards, and it's maybe not as popular as it was, but I think it's still pretty consistent. People earning a living out of it, and doing well.
Yeah.
And obviously professionals getting paid to ride, and which must be great,
Yeah.
I maybe sometimes wish I had maybe been the third or fourth wave when you could earn a living.
Yeah.
And be paid to do it, as opposed to just doing it as a kind of pastime hobby.
But then maybe that comes with a certain freedom that you can create what opportunities you want and have this, almost you had the sport to yourself for a while,
Yeah, I guess so.
And that must have been a nice thing to be that. There's two of us doing it, and we don't know anybody else. That must have been that must be incredible.
Yeah, well, to be fair, there were other people doing it. We just hadn't hooked up with them. I mean, I remember one of the very, very early persons was a guy called Hugh Parsons, from Wales, right. And he was around doing his own thing, So I would never say we were the first. We were maybe one of the first in Scotland, but certainly not first in the UK. But among a handful of people who kind of got started, I think, all around the same time.
So there we are. Stuart Duncan, absolute legend and pioneer. And what a pleasure to spend some time in his company. Such a sort of gentle-spoken, thoughtful person. And I really enjoyed that. And yeah, as I said before, he lives around the corner from me. So I get to hang out with him a bit more, hopefully soon. So what's been going on? I took delivery of a big pile of old snowboard magazines at the weekend, including issue 1 of Snowboard UK, which, oh my God, talk about taking me back. I remember picking up the first copy of Snowboard UK in Charing Cross, W.H. Smith's, and just being so blown away that there was actually a scene, there was actually a publication devoted to this, and there were other people doing it. So yeah, kind of picking that magazine up and leafing through it, because I had studied that magazine from front to back, and probably most subsequent magazines since. Absolutely. I mean, that was the only gateway I had into the UK scene. It was the only way I knew that anything was even going on. So yeah, kind of picking up that magazine was taking a proper trip down memory lane, which was really fun. And as soon as we get our Instagram sorted, I'll be starting to post little bits out of those magazines up, which hopefully you'll find them really interesting and fun, or just quite laughable. There's a really fun picture of Chris Moran, which I sent him, where he looks about 12. And yeah, really made me laugh. So yeah, that's been going on. So, and we've also been digitizing some movies. We've put up Chaos the movie, the sequel, and The Invasion, and going up now are a copy of The Garden, the old Volcom Stone classic. What else? Critical Conditions and The Hard, the Hungry and the Homeless, and also creating a playlist of not all Shred films, because that would be pointless, but certainly I would say the most influential ones from my perspective. They're up on the YouTube channel, Thank You Snowboarding, as we speak. So you can go and check that out. And that brings us to the music at the top of the podcast. It's by the Gutter Brothers, called Still Waiting, and it's from Chaos the movie, which was probably the original British homemade low budget or no budget snowboard film put together by the clothing brand Chaos back in 93 possibly it came out, I don't know. But yeah, that's up on the YouTube channel, and that song is from it, and it just sort of shows a gloriously British take on snowboarding. Everything's kind of homemade, making the best out of what you have available and trying to emulate what you'd seen in magazines from America, basically. And it's a great thing, so go and enjoy that. What else? I guess if you follow any Alp-based business or people, you'll see that it's been dumping across the Alps. Looks like really great early season conditions. So if you were thinking about a shred trip, and you could probably do it quite cheaply at this time of year. Obviously, people don't gamble on the early season too far ahead, so you might find that there's some really good deals before Christmas that might be worth taking care of to go and get your shred fix, and you might get some early season POW. So obviously be careful with early season POW. You know, Michael Schumacher is a case in point, not wearing a helmet, going off piste, banging his head. Don't end up like that. Early season power is a bit of a dangerous game, so be careful, but do go and get your shred on. If you're thinking about it, then pull the trigger. You won't regret it. And yeah, just want to send another big shout out to the Reason magazine. If you haven't seen the latest issue, then it is a beautiful thing. Get in touch. It's the only magazine left in the UK. They put a lot of love and work into it, and it's now sort of elevated from a magazine to being quite a beautiful thing. So grab a copy at the Reason Mag and put it on your coffee table or put it in your loo, either way, just so that when you've got a few spare minutes or you're having a dump, you can see some shred and get stoked. So yeah, apart from that, if you have any snowboarding related stuff you want to share with us, you can get us on the email at thankyouSnowboarding@gmail.com. Basically, if you want to tell us anything you want to share with the community, we've been getting some really nice messages in just in support of the podcast and people saying that it's getting them revved up for shredding. So if you want to get in touch and tell us something, whatever it may be, anything you want to share with the community, then yeah, it's thankyouSnowboarding@gmail.com. And next week we are having Becky Malthouse on the podcast. A really fun conversation with her. Again, more history and stories than I knew about, and it's a really great chat with her, getting to know her a bit better. We were sort of friends, we sort of knew each other a bit, but never really got a chance to kind of hang out and chat. So that's next week where you can get us. So until then, take it easy. Thank you, snowboarding. Peace out.